Everyone's profile from where it was at before here has risen.
I take credit for Mel's and Flip's profile.
Stop.
That's raising your profile.
Two niggas that add together won't equal my popularity. Can't tell me that. I can't tell me that. Don't try to compare me to y'all.
Freddie helped you out.
You kind of though, but you did.
Kind of what?
You did. You kind of.
Kind of what?
Don't make me show you grace right now.
You gonna be the example of why I stop with niggas.
The Joe Budden podcast co-hosts turn on each other and try to assign value to everyone in the room. Yes, in the last episode of the podcast, what we saw was a bunch of folks trying to find out who was hotter before and after they joined the Joe Budden podcast. For those of you that don't know, the Joe Budden podcast has become somewhat of a force. Yes, there's other podcasts that are as big in profile like Gillian Wallow and Drink Champs and The Breakfast Club, but not many have taken random people and made them stars. You look at Rory, you look at Maul, you look at Emanny, Ish, Ice, Flip, Melissa Ford. They all had their profile rise when they joined the Joe Budden podcast. But it seems like folks' egos are now starting to get them to feel a type of way. And the person with the biggest ego is Queen's Flip. So a little bit into the podcast, they start to have this conversation. Did the Joe Budden podcast rise the profile of people on the show? Now, it's obvious it has. I mean, these people are getting looks and deals that weren't really there until they were on the podcast. You could look at Melissa Ford. Oh my God, she's getting more movies. Now, they Lifetime movies, but I didn't really see her getting that many movies until she was on the show. I want to say it's not because of the Joe Budden podcast, but I do wonder if her visibility on the show has helped. Then you had Ice getting Twitch deals and caffeine deals. I don't think they would have signed him if he wasn't on the Joe Budden podcast. Then we have Ish. A lot of podcasts want him on the show. Bag Fuel, Mandy. Would they want him on the pod if it wasn't for him being on the Joe Budden podcast? Then we have Mark. Nah, he had a lot of profile before the show, but the way people look at him now is different, and he says it on his own channel. But now let's look at Queen's Flip. Queen's Flip had the biggest profile as far as overlapping with the same audience that the Joe Budden podcast had. But even that audience is a bit different. But it was just more of a shared audience than Mark. And while he was famous, we have to call a spade a spade. He was nowhere near as famous until he got on the Joe Budden podcast. And this led to tension in the episode between Emanny and Flip as they began to discuss exactly the layout of Flip's network, with Emanny noting that, what you were doing on your channel was starting to fall apart, right? Your interviewing of gang members changed the podcast game. Not gonna lie, he was on it before a lot of people were on it. That is something that he added to the space for better or worse. Flip changed the game with that. He was getting tons of views. Even Flip said a lot of the Bloods started to launch their podcast. A lot of them started to launch their channel. But Flip was getting so much tension and all of that stuff from it that he eventually wanted to migrate away from it. He would say this on the Joe Budden podcast. It was just too much drama. And even the skits were becoming increasingly redundant. Flip didn't have the comedic chops that the newfound players in the game like Drewski would have. He was becoming diluted. He wasn't as funny. He was becoming a New York IG skit person. And even Flip said that he was in a bad place before he joined the Joe Budden network. Remember, he was saying he was having tax issues and all of this stuff, which to me means he didn't have faith that the money he was making from what he was doing would get him out of that drama. And Flip and Emanny even go back and forth because Flip has an issue with the points Emanny is making because he thinks that he is getting his talking points from me, and even says oh, I'm gonna slap
Your content before you
Yes.
up here. Your views were dropping. You came up here, they started going back all the other little skit stuff, right? They were starting to decrease.
That's not
I'm
true.
telling you, I watched it.
You watch it. You watch it. You're basing that of you're basing
viewership.
you're basing it off of being cool or trying to be down. With I'm a slap.
He's talking about me in that exchange right there. And I just gotta say, man, come on, Flip. It's been 3 years of this. Stop it already, buddy. I've been paying taxes since I was 16, bro. 20 years. Well, actually more than that. Come on, Flip. Mature past the crash out. I always say that. You know, you up there, you're getting good money, getting paid $200,000 a year based on what the New York Times said. I think you should protect that a little bit more. But then things go diabolical. When Flip says he's worth more than Emanny and Ish put together in terms of profile. Now, that is true in some regard. But in the universe of the Joe Budden podcast, that is completely wrong. Flip is not worth more than Ish. Ish is actually the bigger person on the pod. I know people don't want to address that, but the biggest moments have happened with Ish there, outside of Rory and Mo, of course. Melissa Ford is also up there because she goes viral. I think Man in the Car, a.k.a. JBP Elevated, he woke it up. You do a video about Melissa Ford, you're going to get engagement. She's very attractive. She also has the women audience. It's a different type of conversation with Melissa Ford and Flip. But Ish, remember the hookah story? Those shouting matches? He reaches further because of his engagement and it appearing more authentic. There's a real tension. I know sometimes he'd be quiet on the show looking super sad in the face, but when he does get into it, it comes across the audience like, oh, this is really, really real. It's not COE. It's not the skit persona that Flip likes to present. It's authentic in nature, so people get more engaged. But Emanny and Flip further the conversation when Emanny says, yo, I did a lot for you. I helped boost the Patreon. And that got ugly a little bit because Flip was trying to do the, nah, not really. You know, I helped, you know, that was me. It was funny because Joe was enjoying it as a result of seeing Flip go through the same exact thing that he goes through whenever, you know, there's a new person on the channel and people claim that they are the ones that made it hot. The truth is nobody is bigger than the platform. And none of y'all likely will ever be as popular as you were without the Joe Budden podcast. It's just a fact. Outside of Flip, who I think his profile will drop considerably if he ever leaves, all you got to do is look at his channel. It's not really gangbusters. He's putting a lot of effort into it. And I don't even think his Patreon is doing crazy numbers, but people tell me they are. So we'll have to see. But let me know what you think. Do you feel like the Joe Budden podcast has led to the rise of members of the show? I don't think it's really debatable. Melissa Ford was conspicuously quiet. She did not want to speak. So to me, I assume that she feels like she was maybe hot before. And I think she was hot in some ways, but around the time of her joining the Joe Budden podcast, not so much. She didn't have a podcast. I think her situation with Jason Lee fizzled out. Her channel was largely dead and dormant. She was doing For the Foodies. Nobody was really watching that. And maybe had she put an effort to grow it, because like I said, she does generate clicks, she would have been fine. But because she joins the Joe Budden podcast after being dormant for a little bit, now you can make the argument that the JBP made her hot. And we will have to see the ramifications of this conversation because Flip says he shouldn't have said that he's bigger than Emanny and Ish combined, but he doesn't necessarily say that he didn't mean it. It's something he said before. Flip feels like he's higher on the pecking order than Ish and Emanny and Ice. But if I look at my own analytics, if you look at the YouTube analytics for the JBP, that isn't the case. Hell, when Flip goes absent, people are happy. When Ish goes absent, people are like, well, where's Ish? And there's even the other thing that complicates all of this is Mark Lamont Hill is now the highest in terms of the totem pole when it comes to the guest on the show. We all see what's going on. The podcast feels like something's missing when he's not there. So much so that Joe has had to get a bunch of guest interviews, and it's creating a weird identity crisis for the Joe Budden podcast in the moment. Now, I think Joe's only doing this because it's the summer, and he knows that the summer is when things go incredibly left. So he's trying to find ways to adjust on the fly, and that is what's going on there. For the most part, I think Joe's interviews with celebrities, especially artists, are super trash. And he has admitted to it. He said that he likes to create safe environments for the artists because he used to be an artist and he didn't like when he would go on shows and they would make him feel uncomfortable to get engagement. But still, as a consumer, that doesn't matter to me if the podcast isn't interesting or engaging. So, like I said, to sum up this video, the podcast co-hosts, they all kind of turned on each other. They all kind of were trying to evaluate each other. And sorry, guys, the JBP made you hot. People accused me of the same thing. Hell, the JBP all made us hot. You guys are getting paid, right? You're not rejecting the money. Flip, you signed up to be part of it. You can't now turn around and say, nah, man, I was hot before that, blah, blah, blah. No, you was hot. But you wasn't hot enough for you to believe that you could do it by yourself. You called Joe. You wanted to do a show with Math and Joe. And you ended up on the network because you needed the look. Joe didn't need you. You called him. And you played the role because Ice and Ish were slowing up the pod. And you made it kind of lit again. And then you made it kind of not lit again. And then Mark took you to a whole nother level when he got there. The numbers didn't get better, but the level of prestige the podcast had did get better. All right, y'all. Like I say, always let me know what you think. Follow me on Patreon. I'm doing some great content over there. I address my neutral ops. For those of you that don't know what a neutral op is, a neutral op is when somebody pretends to be neutral, but really they moving oppy. You know, let's say you get into a beef with somebody. They start saying things like, oh, I'm staying out of it, but I agree with what the other person said. And they only do that because they need you. They need the look you give them. But that's just me. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.